Welcome back to the Nick and the Nathan show. We're obviously reviewing Tenet because I was speaking backwards there. How are you guys doing? Starting with Nathan.
I am doing good. Or I will be doing good. Or I was doing good.
How about you, Nate? How are you? How are you doing, Nate? I think we
lost you for a second on
FaceTime bug there.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi's being bad. I am just confused because I saw this movie. Yep, that's
makes two of us.
Yep,
makes two of us. So I have not seen this movie. This is the most recent Christopher Nolan movie. This came out in 2019, yeah?
2020.
2020? Oh, wow. One of the few movies that came out in 2020. So I've not seen it. It's a new one. I watched it I started watching it about 2.5 hours ago. I wrapped it up about 8 minutes ago. So my mind has been blown and I have tons of questions. I have not really been spoiled. YouTube, thankfully, the algorithm realized I didn't watch this movie, so it wasn't promoting much, spoilery stuff. So that's good. I got to walk into this pretty fresh, and I'm very confused. Nate, how many times have you watched this?
I've seen it twice. The first time was in theaters last summer. Nice. I got lucky, and unfortunately, I decided to go to a late showing though, and I fell asleep for like 5 minutes because I was bored. No. But the second viewing was just yesterday, and
okay,
so that helped clear some things up a little bit.
Definitely.
Least.
So for me, if you saw our Inception review, you'll know that I'm in the double digits for Inception. But Tenet, I've watched it a couple times, not quite as many, but I was able to see it twice in theaters, which was actually awesome because I saw it at different theaters, so I was able to get a couple different perspectives on the sound because each theater did it differently.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And I saw it once just at home on a rental. So
cool. Yeah. This movie I'm definitely gonna be watching again in the short term future. Either that or just watching a bunch of YouTube. How this works or whatever. Spoilers, obviously, for this entire Tenet movie. If we're reviewing the movie, I think it's a general idea that you're going to get spoiled if you watch this. So leave now if you do not want to be spoiled.
But come back.
But come back after you're done, because we had that whole social media conversation about how addicted we all are to social media. So come back to social media. Don't forget about that. So this movie, let's just go. Let's just give overall thoughts. I mean, what do you think about it, Nate? Like overall, like good, bad, thumbs up, thumbs down. What are your overall thoughts?
So overall, I'm still not 100% set yet because I don't know if the story makes sense. I don't know.
I don't know if it makes sense. That's how confusing it is.
I know. It doesn't make sense to me, but it might make sense in the logic that the movie sets up for itself. I can't tell. There are a couple of moments where it breaks. So as of right now, I'm like sitting where it's like, I like some things about it, but like overall, it's not anything like great that I'd consider anyway. I think it really lacks in some important areas, specifically character, and so that's kind of the biggest issue for me. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I'm sure I'll have a little bit more to impact that decision by the end of the episode. But
okay, well that's good to know. Get a baseline down. How about you, Nathan?
So it's kind of like a little bit of a love-hate relationship with me in this movie because there's so many things that are just awesome and perfect, and I wouldn't change it.
We got to stop the show here for a second. Nathan used the word hate when describing a Christopher Nolan movie. Wow.
Okay, I say love-hate as in like there's good and bad. I don't actually hate this movie, but basically there's so many awesome parts about it that I love and I think is really creative and pushing what movies can be. But then there's some really weird just random inconsistencies and like couple unconventional things and there's some interesting character decisions that I am just not such a huge fan of, but there's tons of exposition, too much exposition.
Oh, yeah. So
really bad exposition.
Yeah.
Nick, what about you?
I'd give it a 2 thumbs up. I'm enjoying it. I think I need to definitely watch it quite a few more times to figure out what the heck's going on, or like
you might still be high on adrenaline from your viewing 8 minutes ago.
I probably am, but I knew as I was watching it, I was quite confused in a few spots, especially the car chase and kind of the whole climax. But I knew that this is a Christopher Nolan movie, so I know it all adds up. I just don't know how yet, so I need to go back and figure out how it adds up, because I haven't watched it.
You think it adds up? This one doesn't really add up in a lot of places, even after several viewings. No, don't
tell me that. No, oh no. Okay, what points does it not add up?
Temporal pincer movements don't make sense. Like, the fact that you're able to go forward and like each side is able to tell each other what they saw, that's a paradox. It doesn't make sense. And the movie like even says, don't try to understand it, feel it. That's a quote from the movie. You're not supposed to try to understand it. And like there's just a lot of, I like confusing and I like stuff you have to think about. I don't like too confusing and is impossible to think about. But it's too confusing. There's way too much exposition.
You've been in a medically induced...
Hi, I need to get to Sanjay.
Seems you need an introduction.
Was almost taken out by a very unusual...
The gas he made his millions from was actually the information that I helped to probe.
Storage facility for art that was acquired.
It's sort of like a transit lounge for art.
They used the hangar on the west side of the
Just built a turnstile in that. Data tried to look, they only used to...
A remote Russian missile station was over...
digging plutonium from the rubble.
CIA provides 2/3 of the market for...
The facility is flooded with...
After which it was used for underground.
And the exposition is just like jargon, like the positrons and electrons are moving backwards through time, but it's impossible to know the nature of a true reality if it's inverted, and like it's just...
You mean reverse chronology? Like Feynman and Wheeler's notion of the positrons and electron moving backwards in time.
In a parallel worlds theory, we can't know the relationship between consciousness and multiple realities.
Spitting nuclear quantum physics at us via Robert Pattinson, so...
Yeah. I'm just kind of watching it like, if you say so. I'll take your word for it. I don't know. I don't know enough to question it, but it just makes it so hard to like follow the story and get really invested in some areas of it, just because like I can't follow what's happening super easily, and when that's difficult, I mean, especially on the first viewing. On the second viewing, I was able to like maintain investment a little more because I understood a little bit more about the story. But when you're just left questioning, wait, how is that happening? What just happened there? What dialogue did I just miss there? Like, when all of that is happening all at once on a first viewing, it's quite a difficult experience to try and understand it all. So yeah, it will benefit from more viewings in the future, no doubt.
And my philosophy on this with viewings is you're not supposed to watch this movie once. You're never supposed to. Like, the first viewing, right? You're so busy during each scene thinking about what happened during the last scene where you can't keep up with it and process it. And like you have to make a little bit more time in the movie during a second viewing where you're not as surprised about the fact that they're crashing a plane into an airport and why they're doing that. And you have a little bit more time to think about what's happening and try to understand the dialogue. Mm-hmm. But it's... I meant that kind of as a joke because you can't hear the dialogue in some spots. But
Becoming one.
Jumpables of words.
Being compromised.
You want to meet me? Kiev on the 14th.
In the car, not the fire truck.
In the middle of the street, can't stay out of the record.
Well, we better put it out now.
Work where no one else would.
So yeah, I saw you sent that video, but I hadn't seen it yet. What was the thesis of that video, or did you have anything that you wanted to bring up on that?
So my thought, if we start with audio, the most controversial thing, or one of the most controversial things about this film, was the fact that the audio was mixed a little bit unconventionally. There's a couple spots where the music, which is great by the way, is blaring like super loud, and you can't understand what either of the characters are saying in that scene, and it seems like it's important. But if we talk about like the Freeport scene, for instance, where Neil is going through the Freeport and learning about like their safety systems and everything, and then the guy that works there is like explaining it, you can't hear what the guy's saying because the music is just like really as loud as it can go. It's cranked up to 11. And we're not really supposed to hear what the guy's saying because the camera is showing us a lot of what we need to hear, I think.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Like, we'll see where Neil's looking, and then the camera will show what Neil's looking at. Like, we see the halide gas safety system, right? We see he's looking at all the locks on the doors. And that's really what we care about. And I think that, like, it just... Some people didn't realize what Nolan was trying to sell with that. And the point of that scene is Neil wasn't thinking about what the guy was saying. Neil was just there to see what the safety systems look like.
That's a good point though with the audio mixing. I did notice that even on my first viewing that like it was difficult to keep track of. But then as I was watching it, I kind of figured out the music is masking the words here because I'm not supposed to be listening to the words. Like I'm supposed to be paying attention to what's happening on the screen. And I think that this has happened a couple other times with Chris Nolan's movies. I mean, he in Interstellar, kind of the whole gargantua scene. I mean, when they're going into the black hole, the music is so loud and blaring. That
like he has this one line that's actually really funny. Like this little maneuver is going to cost us 50 years, and that like there's been memes made out of that. There's some, this little maneuver is going to cost us 50 years. That's what it sounds like. So
exactly.
It's just kind of.
But he does that because you're supposed to be focused visually, and the soundtrack is not distracting as dialogue is, I guess. And because when I'm listening to dialogue, I'm like trying to piece together the English words into a cohesive thought, and then I'm also trying to fit that thought into the greater context of the scene and then the movie. But when the music is playing, I can turn off all of that and enjoy the music for what it is, but then that allows me to focus a little bit more on the visuals. And I think that was really important in this movie, especially during quite a few of the scenes where it was like, you need to be clued into the visuals here or you're gonna miss like everything.
And then meanwhile trying to figure out... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead,
yeah,
Nate.
that is one thing that on my first viewing, I didn't have subtitles, obviously, because I was in the theater, but on my second viewing, I turned them on just to... Because I figured some of the scenes where the music overtook dialogue, I figured that was intentional in at least some scenes. And really the only time I noticed that overtaking it was in the bank when he was getting... Or in the Freeport when he was getting the tour. There was no subtitles during that scene. All the other times that the music takes over, kind of like in that boat the sequence where they're all on the boat and Sator and protagonist are talking to each other, that part's kind of difficult to hear, and there is script for that. But the part in Freeport isn't scripted. So I think there are parts that are intentional and parts that aren't, and I think because on my second viewing, I did not... It was just that one scene that I noticed the bad sound balancing. The other ones, I was able to recognize all the dialogue, and I think that might just be because I had the subtitles on. And that's how I took in the information. Unless it was just different on the sound system I was using. I'm not sure. But it was really strange, because I remembered a lot more moments where the sound was overtaking dialogue, but I didn't get that on the second viewing. As much.
I think there was some screenshot that got posted to Reddit, of course, where there was like a scene where someone was talking and the subtitle just had parentheses and it said dialogue unintelligible in the subtitles.
That's funny.
Yeah. And then what I was gonna say was, like, sure, the music is supposed to make you focus on the visuals, but no, I was focusing on the music, and I was trying to figure out what they're trying to say, and I had to worry about the visuals too. Oh, no. I just got a sensory overload, and I wasn't able to keep up because the music was so good.
This movie was pretty much a sensory overload for 2.5 hours. Like, I'm a little exhausted. My brain's a little exhausted after watching this movie because it is so trippy to watch two things happen at once in two directions temporally. and trying to figure out, all right, is this happening in forwards or backwards? That's happening. No, that's going backwards. Okay, so this one's forwards or whatever. And there's quite a few scenes, especially during the end battle and the car scene, and even the first fist fight with themselves. Like it was like, okay, I know that they're just playing this backwards in the camera, but like, hold on. And then you gotta keep a lot of things in your RAM in your brain. You gotta keep a lot of things in RAM in your brain, because you gotta remember this is how the scene starts, so this is how it's going to end for the other guy. And so, you know, my brain short circuited.
Like watching the fist fight for the second time is just crazy, because you're thinking about it, like the scene where he's like crawling across the gun or crawling across the floor to grab the gun. Like it looks so weird in reverse, and it also just doesn't make sense going the other way, because then like fighting in reverse is so weird and trippy.
I have to give major props. I didn't check to see who did the choreography here, but there's some massive choreography going on here, because
there was one of them that was reverse one time when you see it, but that actually happened. There was like no special effects in the actual shooting of that scene.
Yeah. There's also a few things when he was on the fire truck, when the protagonist was on the fire truck. It was being played back forward, but I kind of picked up that it looked like it was being recorded in reverse, because his movements looked pretty unnatural. And maybe I'll catch that again on the second viewing and find out that I was wrong. But
I didn't even catch that on my third viewing, so
I don't know. Maybe it was filmed in forward, but like the way he was interacting with the ground, it looked like he was going backwards, even though he was going forwards. And that's where the trippy part was for me. You know, I suffer from mild dyslexia, so it's already confusing sometimes to figure out what direction things are going in the real world. But when this movie is like having me question what direction things are going, I'm just like, what's going on here? So it was great though.
Yeah, the production of that entire car chase scene was wild, because everything that looks like when you think you're going forward, it was actually being filmed and then put into reverse, like because they had to get the car. And there was very little like splicing of stuff, like very little like what's it called when you paste something in with a transparent background, just like
VFX or whatever.
Yeah, just putting stuff artificially back in. Like there was almost none of that in this film, because if there was something in reverse happening, they were doing everything else in reverse to be able to film that forward. So if there's a car driving backwards, they were filming it forward. If there's a car driving forward, they were filming it backward. So lots of really weird stuff.
Very crazy. And then the scene that kind of got me was the airplane scene when they crashed into the hangar. And it was on the second time they were going through it. They were going forward, but everyone else was going backwards. And I was like, okay, hold on. The water here is telling me that this was filmed going forwards and then played backwards, which means the actors that we're seeing going forward were actually going backwards, but they were walking very normally, and I don't even know how to walk backwards to begin with, much less make it look pretty real. I'm just like,
lots of practice and lots of planning, because that plane crash, of course, in true Nolan fashion, it was real, so they had to
small scale.
No, they did crash like a real full size 747.
I'm pretty sure that was a model. I did see that was like 90% sure that might have been a model.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up just to be safe.
Look it up because we're accurate on this show. We don't make anything up. I'm fairly
Can you hear
certain
my
that
mechanical keyboard from here with the dynamic?
I can. It is very clickety clackety. Nate, what did you pick up on with the backwards and forward stuff? Did you have any moments that kind of blew your mind as far as the actors being able to act in two directions?
Sorry, my internet dropped there. What?
You're good. Was there any specific moments that kind of blew your mind with the actors going backwards or forwards?
Not necessarily that blew my mind. There was one scene. It was in the third act when they're at like Stalsk 12. There was just a few shots where it looked I think the red team had to like run backwards and for the filming, and it looked like they didn't have much practice at it. I can't quite remember like the specific moment, but I remember there just being a couple moments where it looked awkward, and of course there like all the moments where they executed well are really impressive. Like just thinking about that behind the scenes, like all that training that must have been required, I just think they might have skimped out on that in just a couple scenes, and that kind of stuck out like a sore thumb amidst the rest of the good choreography.
Yeah.
So what I noticed, I actually didn't notice any like weird inconsistencies with the reverse stuff.
Okay.
I just looked it up, and they did crash a real plane into a real building.
Wow.
All
Okay.
the fire, everything you see is real.
Wow. All right. Wow.
Nick, you're wrong.
That's
You should do your
impressive.
research. No, I'm kidding.
I just watched the movie, Nathan. I'm gonna do my research. Oh man, yeah. I'd seen a VFX artist who was talking about Tenet like probably 6 months ago, and I guess walked away from that with the impression that it was on a smaller scale. But I guess not. That's impressive.
That makes me wonder what the budget is. Like,
200 million.
oh wow.
It was Nolan's highest ever budget on a film, and they're never giving him that much again because critics didn't love Tenet too much. So
Critics never know what's good. In my experience, when a critic says something's bad, normally it's actually a good movie.
no, if critics say something's bad, it's probably bad. If critics say something's good, it's probably also bad.
Okay, well that's fair too. But I enjoyed this movie, and if the critics say it's bad, then the critics don't know it's good, because I thought it was pretty good. I don't think it's passing up Interstellar or Inception at the moment yet, but it's definitely up there with good movies.
So what I think with Tenet and the whole like inversion mechanics is it's a really clever idea. It's just there's a couple spots that are like too painful to think about, like temporal pincers, for instance. The entire red room, blue room. That should be a tongue twister. Part with Sador and the protagonist, like where Sador, we get to see it all from like forward perspective, and then we see it all from the new Sador's perspective, and that is really confusing, just to witness. But there's a lot of kind of beauty in the confusingness of it.
Yeah,
I think you're able to like just embrace that you're not going to try to understand it and just take in the crazy experience of it. And like especially like seeing it in theaters like that was just a wild experience because it's cranked up to 11 like on the speakers. Like it's the loudest movie I've ever seen. The gunshots were almost as loud as real gunshots.
Wow.
It was basically just a wild like experience. It felt like I was there basically. But
that's cool. Yeah, I don't know what those pincers, is that what they're called?
Temporal pincer movement is what they call it.
Temporal pincer movement.
It's where they have one team moving backward and one team moving forward to get each other information.
Again, I haven't thought about this for more than a couple hours at this point, but it seems to make sense if you suspend your disbelief of a linear timeline. Like the whole movie is basically like, okay, hey, linear timelines, forget about that. Here's what's going on in this universe. And as long as you're able to suspend that, and I guess I was this first viewing, we'll see if it makes any less sense watching it again at some point. But it wasn't something that was unwrap-aroundable with my mind. Like I was able to understand it, but didn't feel forced, I guess, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
So we gotta talk about the actors and actress here. Any specific thoughts on them? Besides the fact that poor Denzel Washington, or who was that? Was it
John David
Washington?
John David Washington. He didn't even get a character name. I'm just like,
Nope.
oh,
Just
poor guy.
No, but that's the
Protagonist.
character. I have something to say on that actually.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
But so the protagonist, I think that we get to learn a lot more about his character than we would if he had a name. Let me explain. So there's this world kind of has a lot of like kind of military, kind of spy, like undercover, like that kind of vibe, and everyone kind of has to maintain some level of anonymity. But like you don't really want to open up to people. Like Neil, for a little bit, for instance, like he has a real name, and that just kind of like is a little bit of like you can get to know someone with a name, right? But the protagonist, like he makes an effort to stay anonymous in a lot of the things that he does, and I think that this kind of tells us a lot about his character. Like he's a little bit more selfless in what he's doing because of Like he just is motivated by something greater than himself. He both wants to save Kat, he wants to save everyone, of course, but he kind of maintains a lack of personal connection to anything to kind of let that interfere. Yeah. So it's interesting, like, to see like his kind of character almost evolve throughout the film as he realizes that he started Tenet, but it's a little bit tricky to think about. It's definitely unconventional because we're supposed to deal with emotional connections that happen in the future, right? And that's not something that you see in your average Marvel movie, right? Yeah. But or Mission Impossible, I guess is a better example, but it's just a lot of more. You have to think about it for it to really take hold, I guess.
That's a good point. Nate, did you have any thoughts on the characters or the lack of arcs?
Yeah. So the thing that stuck out to me with character was Kat. She was the only story that I cared about while watching. I think the way that they tied in her seeing the woman diving off the boat and envying her how free she was, and then seeing that come back around at the end and the roles are reversed and she makes sure that her past self on the other boat gets to see her take that dive. That was like the best payoff because it was like the most earned because they did the most work with Kat's character throughout the film. Protagonist, I don't really understand his motivations for why he's trying to save Kat.
It's because he likes Kat, but like I think if with the protagonist and Kat is the main like emotional like kind of process that I think we see in the film, because he knows that if he grows close to her, then he probably won't keep doing what he's doing, saving the world and stuff, right? But he kind of like sets up like the phone call thing, right? If you remember that, he doesn't really want to grow close to anyone in the film, which is why he keeps his name anonymous. But I think it's just a little bit of a tricky circumstance with the protagonist because of the situation he's in. But I love Kat's whole journey with Sator. She kind of slowly grows like further and further against him, and eventually like shoots him in the end. And the whole thing with her quoting him like on that last scene in the boat was just kind of powerful. And
I definitely got some goosebumps there. It's I love it when a movie comes full circle, and this movie came full circle like many times.
Every Nolan movie.
I know, pretty much. I mean, literally, I guess. But
maybe not like the Batman trilogy, but no, those are all still great movies.
Yeah, I have yet to see those. I do appreciate though that like everything that got set up got paid off, and the only thing right now that's in my mind is something that hasn't been paid off yet, at least visually. I guess we kind of got an explanation at the end. Is that it in that very beginning fight where the protagonist ends up dying or taking the cyanide pill or whatever, he almost gets shot by an inverse bullet, but he doesn't because someone saves him. And
did you not pick up on that?
No, I didn't. Who saved him?
The person that saved him had a little red tag on their bag, right?
Oh, okay.
And then Neil had a little red tag on his bag at the end.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. I guess they wrapped it up too. I need to go watch the movie more than once, maybe. I thought it might have been the protagonist saving himself, because there seemed to be a lot of that too. Like, the repetitiveness of time, like seeing something in one aspect and then seeing it on the mirrored aspect was like pretty crazy.
On that note, with the whole like them saying what's happened, like that, like they can kind of go back, and it's all about kind of acting in the moment with what you feel is right, because that's going to happen either way, and it has happened either way.
Yeah.
But like just with the protagonist in the car scene, for instance, him doing that in forward, him doing that in reverse, that kind of all adds up. As well as like the airport scene, like him fighting himself, like that already happened, so we can't really change that, but he would have done that anyway. So
I don't know about you guys on your first viewing, but I felt like there was more than this movie felt like it had a couple false climaxes. where I thought it was wrapping up, but it was just beginning. Like after the Freeport scene, I was like, "Huh, okay, I guess we're in the middle of the action here." Like that was just the beginning. And then during the car chase scene, I thought that was going to be the end. Like I wasn't keeping track of how long it had been, or I was just enjoying the movie. Then I was like, "Oh wow, I guess it's getting to be over with here." But nope, that was just the middle. And like it just kept getting
same for me.
More and more. Go ahead, Nate.
Like after the car chase scene, my first time in theaters, I remember like my first viewing, I liked it less than my second viewing. So during the first viewing, after that car chase, I was like, "Is it over?" And then I saw that it wasn't over, and I was like, I actually sighed because I was so uninvested.
Oh no.
So the character problem really was prominent for me on the first viewing. It wasn't quite as bad on the second viewing. I picked up a little more on some things that they did to try and flesh out the protagonist. I still think Kat had more. But you were right about the false climaxes, and it frustrated me on my first viewing, funnily enough.
I wouldn't say it frustrated me, but it definitely made me wonder what was going to top that. As they're like, "Oh, it's actually not plutonium, and it's actually just this weird, shape that for some reason controls the end of time." Whatever. I was like, okay, so that was a fun false climax. What's the next one going to look like? How epic is this going to be? And I haven't watched any of the trailers for it. I was coming in fairly clean. Obviously it's in the pop culture, so I've seen a few references to the VFX thing that I mentioned earlier, and I think a few memes of that opening ballroom scene with everyone passing out. But other than that, like I came into this pretty clean, and I was very confused on like what the actual climax was going to be. Come to find out, it was like this huge epic battle in 10 minutes going in two directions at once. I was just like, oh my god, this is so cool. Just watching explosions happen in reverse and in forward motion at the same time right next to each other. I'm just like, what?
Like the scene where they blow up the top of the building and then the bottom of the building.
Yeah.
I'm still at a loss of how they did that. Like it's insane. So on that note, should we talk about the cinematography? Because I think, in my opinion, this is the most technically impressive and most like beautiful film I've ever seen.
Okay.
And like just the colors, like it does such an amazing like film kind of orange and teal look. It's not quite an orange and teal, but it has that kind of film vibe to it. Like the way the blues and the greens and everything just really like are such a like satisfying color, and anytime there's any other color, it really pops off of that really well. If you remember like the opening windmill scene when he's like in the windmill and like the orange life vest and the yellow boat, it just looks so good against like that kind of tealish blue water. Like it's all the colors are so beautiful in this film.
There was actually
like
one part in the film where sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't have anything else to say.
Okay. Yeah, so there was just one part in it was in the beginning when protagonist was kind of going from country to country, just getting exposition dump after exposition dump. I felt like there wasn't quite enough like color differences that separated those different locations, and they almost.
I think India had quite the different.
Yeah, Mumbai had that, but the place where Michael Caine was, I don't remember.
London.
Yeah, and then the place following that, like where he met with Kat, like it almost was too similar and like not quite as imaginative.
That was because they were both. Those were both in London, actually.
Oh, they were. Well,
yeah.
Well,
they were similar because they were the same place, I think.
Well, never mind then. Must have got that mixed up.
No, you're good. Yeah, I wasn't really drawn to the color grading as much as I was just the mind-blowing visuals and like how planned all this is. Like that was the big thing that was going through my head as I was watching this. I was like, someone had to think about this. I'm watching it and I don't even pretend to understand I don't even pretend to understand to what I'm to even understand what I'm looking at. I have no idea what's even going on screen. It's all just happening in front of me, and I feel like I'm a toddler just watching the screen like, what? But then, like, I know someone spent $200 million thinking about this, so, like...
Well, the 2 Oscars that they were nominated for, and one of them was Best VFX, they won that one, and Best Production Design, which they were nominated for. And it's fine if you don't like the story, it's fine if you don't like the acting, but you have to admit the production design and the VFX like were just insane in this movie.
Yeah.
Like all the sets were like really creative and unique. Like the whole Freeport is just such an awesome idea. Like really, really awesome sets and stuff.
Yeah. I was excited they brought the real world existence of a Freeport into this thing, and they obviously made it into something that it's not in the real world, but I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Can we talk about the score a little bit? Can I have my little score rant?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Actually, I want to hear what both of you thought of the score, first of all. I know that you really like the score, Nate, because you listened to it out on the soundtrack. Nick, what about you?
The one that stuck out to me, I think it was like Sator's theme. I don't know if that's what the actual title is.
It's just called Sator.
That one, there was just a creepy element to that one that the rest of it was just like riveting for action sequences. But with Sator's theme, it would just creep into the scenes where he was a menacing presence, where the camera would just get closer and closer to him. The scene I always think of is when he's in the bedroom with Kat, and some of these shots, like it's just this part of his face that's in the frame, and it's super uptight and super close and intense. And then I don't really know what the musical terms are to describe it. Maybe you have something on like how his, like what the melody is that just gradually fades in to his theme.
Well, the Sator's theme is really just it's mostly like samples of this kind of like ragged breathing kind of sound, and then the really mainly melodic part is just this really intense, like unsettling synth that just kind of falls in pitch. It's like a bow, but like in a really kind of gritty, distorted tone. But I think the music really ties in well with the film. Like if something epic is happening, you're going to be hearing this really like wild, like synth driven music. And it's not scared to go outside of what is considered film score, right? If you think of like the scene where they have all the trucks and they're stealing what they think is plutonium-241, like it's this really like heavy electronic.
Just, like, in a Pelican case. What? No.
Well, yeah, but they the music there is like kind of like almost like a EDM kind of like, it's got the like the audio ducking where it's like that's a really interesting sidechain compression thing, which is a cool thing in production. But anyway, they're just all this awesome music with a lot of actual intentional dissonance, which is really unsettling where it needs to be, and just some really just groovy songs. I know groovy sounds like an 80s word, but like groove driven, like really beat heavy songs, I guess. But I just love the score in this film. One of my favorite musical things, which is a little bit more experimental and progressive, is music that's in an odd time signature or not really even in time with anything. I really appreciate music that goes outside the bounds of just normal 1, 2, 3, 4, just constant in 4. There's a couple scenes. I think the main example of this is near the plane crash scene. There's a lot of little percussion hits that are in 5. So it's da 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 da, just like really out of it. And then that kind of fades into a 3. Just all this crazy time stuff that I can nerd out about for hours. But I'll spare you guys the rest of that. But just some really awesome music that I can really appreciate.
The soundtrack didn't stand out to me as much as I think it did for you guys on your first viewing. I my eyes were just so captivated visually that I couldn't really process much of the audio stuff. So maybe I need to pull up the soundtrack, I guess, and take a listen to it, because based on your review, Nathan, if you like this as much as you're saying, it has to be a good soundtrack.
Well, I listen to some music that members of my household have deemed as noise, and is this even music? And I listen to some weird experimental stuff, but this, I think, is something else. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah. So let's talk about the ending here. This ends in a loop, as far as I can tell, right? Because
it's not quite a loop; it's more just a inversion.
So the time converges, right? And they stop it from ending everything, but it's going to go forward, and the protagonist survives to live another day, right? But he sets up this whole organization, TENET, and then it loops back to his past self through Neil, right? Or am I misunderstanding that? I don't know.
So my understanding of it is, I know there's a lot of different theories for the timeline, but I think there's one general consensus for one, is if we look at this from the protagonist's perspective, he's moving forward most of the time, but the scene at Stalsk 12, that is happening like around, I think around the opera siege, I think, that first scene that's happening timeline wise around there, because they go inverted for a while to get to that moment, right?
Yeah, they do, but so, yeah. Hold on,
because that's happening during like Sador and Kat's like trip to Vietnam, right? And that happened in the past, so that scene is actually chronologically on the sacred timeline. That's like one of the first scenes in the movie.
Huh. I need to go rethink this whole movie now.
Yep.
Can you run that by me one more time, Nathan? I'm sorry.
So we see that Kat is on the boat with Sador, right, during all of this, and that's during their trip to Vietnam.
Okay. Yeah.
And we hear Kat talking about this like in the past during Kat and the protagonist's first time meeting.
Okay.
So the whole scene at the drop down, the dead drop is what it's called. Yeah. That whole scene is happening at the same time as Kat's vacation to Vietnam, and that's when.
But that's also happening when the opening opera scene is happening.
It's around there, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Christopher Nolan, you blew my mind again. I thought it was going to be done after I watched it, but no.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll try to pull up a timeline to see if we can dive into that anymore.
Yeah, we need to get Loki on some TVA timeline management.
We need to get the TV on here.
Yeah.
You look at the timeline, and there's like 4 lines happening. They split off and go backwards in multiple spots. But I'm gonna try to find a resolution.
So,
look at it.
Nate, did you pick up on that, or is that a revelation to you too?
No, that was new to me.
Okay, good.
I never thought that those two events, like at the end of the movie, would be corresponding in time as well. Like, there were some payoffs that were set up earlier, but they're also happening at the same time. Like, ugh.
Okay, I have found the sacred timeline.
Okay.
Loki references are going to be a thing forever now.
Yes.
But so the first thing that happens like chronologically in the whole movie is that whole like Stalsk 12 Vietnam thing, and that happens right before the opera in Ukraine.
Okay.
This whole thing is in a mix of French and English, so I'm gonna try to decipher everything that I can. But basically, the Neil, he's moving through the whole thing forward, like in normal forward fashion. The protagonist is as well. But Sador has quite the backwards path through everything.
Okay.
Like it's this timeline basically has the protagonist Neil, Kat, and Sador, their whole thing moving through everything, and almost every character goes back pretty far, like in inverted, because they can't do time travel. They have to actually wait in a shipping container on a boat. But it's really complicated to explain, but maybe I can just send this to Nate and he can put a picture up of it in the video edit. Yep. But just to sum it up, the protagonist is moving forward for the whole movie up until the car scene, and then from that he's moving backwards for most of the film, or most of the timeline. So he's moving backwards then until the airport scene, when they go back to the airport scene where he's moving forward a little bit, and then they go back there until they get to the next inversion where they're moving backwards to Stalsk 12. But
Wow.
And then he's moving forward from then on out, and then that's the epilogue after that. It's really confusing, but if you look at each line individually, it kind of makes sense.
Can you drop that?
Niels
in the group
is
chat
the one
real
that.
Quick?
What?
Can you drop that picture in the group chat real quick?
Oh yeah.
I'm having no problem visualizing it. Yeah, it's kind of the first time I've ever watched a movie that doesn't obey the laws of time in a way that makes any sense, I guess, on the first viewing. Like, I can get my head around time loops and time travel and time dilation and gargantua, but like this whole like going backwards, going forwards, going backwards, going forwards, and like going over the same event multiple times is kind of trippy, I guess. And
well, it's kind of like just Back to the Future. Like they can have the same person in the same event multiple times. It's just this is a lot different because you're not teleporting to a precise time and location. It's all gradual. So there's tons of clashing, and if you think about it, I don't know. This is my that sign Tenet. It's all like both a metaphor and a literal thing for the entire film.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I don't know. That's good movie. Good movie.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of the opening? Or not quite the opening, but I really liked the guy that like was kind of briefing the protagonist for the first time after he woke up. Like for some reason, I really liked that guy. He was in a Marvel
kind of
movie.
Irish guy?
What?
The guy with the Irish accent?
No, he was an American. He was an American guy, but he was on a boat with the protagonist after he took the fake cyanide.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But I really liked just like the way he explained things. He was like, "You can't work for us anymore because you're dead," and like this, like just like all these like interesting lines about like this exceeds national interest and stuff like that. Like, I just really like the way that he talked, and like just like how he's kind of sarcastic and really serious at the same time with like, "All I have for you is a phrase or a gesture," like just. Do you remember that guy?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I'm just looking at this timeline, like just trying to trace one person through this timeline. It's kind of more of a spaghetti web than anything. I don't know. This is a good movie. I'm gonna have to watch it again. I feel like I'm out of thoughts
this
now.
is a good movie. Like he's starting to question. Like,
so I came in with this, all hyped up after the excitement of watching it. It's like, oh, this is awesome. And I thought
no, I have to do my homework. Like,
no, I know exactly. I thought I understood it, and both Nate and Nathan were like, "Yeah, no, you're probably gonna want to watch that again." Mm-hmm. And here I am being like, "Oh boy, I might actually need to watch this again because this timeline is." I'm having problems even just tracking this timeline. I've just finished watching it, so it's a big one.
I'll try to find one that's in English. That might help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we can just get Scott on this. He'll decipher it for us.
Yeah, he can do that, Mr. French speaker. Yeah, let's see. What other things can we talk about with this movie? We talked about the soundtrack, VFX, cinematography, acting, storyline. What about the motivations? What are the motivations of these characters? Why is
Sador is just insane.
yeah, he kind of like goes
just
God
a
mode there at the end.
Yeah. And the protagonist just kind of selflessly wants to kind of just help everyone. Like we hear them say, like, did my team make it? Like, he's like really concerned about that when he wakes up. Neil it's interesting. We're able to relate to him on a couple things, but then like he just kind of like just spits jargon a lot about quantum. Like, have you studied much quantum physics? Well, okay, I'll put it simply. Then he doesn't put it simply.
Let me explain. No, there's too much. Let me sum up.
Kat is a good character from what Nate has said so far. I think that sums it up pretty well.
She actually has a motivation. What?
Yeah, she's almost got two motivations, because there's also her wanting to be back with her son and trying to escape from Sador.
Those are kind of one of the same, I think.
Yeah, they go hand in hand a little bit, but there's like they're also separate in a way, and so like that's why she was always the most interesting for me, and I would say she's the best character in the film just because she's got the most work put in.
Yeah. What do you think about the SWAT team members in the background? I mean, their character arcs were just so well developed.
I think Ives, if you don't know his name, you know who he is. He's the guy with the beret on a lot, heavy British accent. He's got a really interesting, like, kind of soulless motivation. Like, he's like, okay, we got to do this, we got to save the world, but then he like gives everyone a different part of the algorithm. He's like, I will look for you and I will find you. Like, just like like he's just like, of course, like he's trying to like do what's right with the algorithm and stuff, but he just goes about it in a really interesting way, and like he's just really passive aggressive and mean to everyone.
Yeah, I did find that strange at the end, for sure.
Is there room for a Tenet 2?
No, Nolan does not do sequels. No,
but
because he knows they're bad and he doesn't want to even try to do one.
Why not?
Well, have you ever seen a sequel that you were unhappy with?
Oh, yeah,
just almost every sequel.
Every single time.
Exactly.
But it still doesn't mean that it can't exist. I can be plenty unhappy with things that
It's like Bernie Sanders saying, like, oh yeah, like like socialism hasn't worked in every country that's been tried, but they didn't have Bernie. Like, that's when people say stuff like that.
That's true. I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see more stories told in this way, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Maybe not necessarily using the same characters or even the same, like, situations, but, like, non-linear parallel timelines existing in the same moment together in different directions is something I'd never considered before as a method of storytelling. And now that I've seen it, I kind of want to see more of it. And I would love to see this Tenet universe be built out a little bit more. You know, maybe not following these characters or cast of characters or whatever, but like just this method of storytelling was so interesting that I want to see it happen again, because I almost think that this is the future of stories. Because if anything, the classic hero's arc is so overdone, and like every single movie is the same 7 stories told different ways. And I feel like this one, it still was, you know, the protagonist is saving the world, but like it's told in such a different way that it's interesting and new and fresh, and like I want a little bit more of that. I don't know. Yeah,
I don't think Nolan will ever do another one, but I think this might pave the way for some other people to do something similar.
Yeah, there's some things from this film that I hope people like go on with, like that unique storytelling that you guys have mentioned, but there's also that thing that I really hope stops is just, it felt like this was more focused on superficial, wow, look at this set piece. A lot of scenes just felt like excuses for set pieces. and I'm kind of hoping that's a trend that dies, like, and movies become less superficial and more like character driven and just supported by the script, I guess. Because this one just had a lot of problems that like didn't necessarily take me out, but will ruin investment for some people, and at times ruined my investment.
This is reminding me a little bit of one of Nolan's older films, The Prestige. If either of you have seen it,
No, I haven't.
it's one of.
I want to.
I guess you can say this about all of them, but it's one of his best. But it's told like everything happens chronologically, but it's told non-chronologically, so we see a lot of scenes from close to the end. The first scene in the film is actually one of the later scenes in the film. Then we see stuff happening from far in the past, like, and cutting to stuff from, like, the present, I guess you could say. Like, it's edited in an interesting way, but it still has a chronological story. But it is definitely character-driven. It's all about the interactions between, like, 3 or 4 main characters. So either of you, if you're interested in that, maybe we could talk about it in the future. But The Prestige is an amazing story.
I'd love to check that out.
Yeah, I haven't even seen that.
I've heard about it.
Yep. Even it came out in like 2006. Like,
oh, wow.
I think the beautiful like cinematography still holds up to this day because they shot on film. Shooting on film like makes your film timeless. It'll look good in the future no matter what.
Yep.
You can always upscale it to 4K and stuff too, which is awesome.
Huh. Yep. Got Scarlett Johansson. That's pretty good.
Yeah. She's a little bit of a boring character in that movie, but she's there, yeah.
I was just scrolling through the wiki article. Oh, Hugh Jackman, of course. Okay, cool. I'm sold now.
Back on Nolan reusing actors. He hasn't reused Hugh Jackman, but Michael Caine is actually a main character in that film, which is cool.
Really?
Wow.
And what's his name? Batman. Crap, I forgot the actor's name, but
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale, that's the guy. Yeah, he's also the other main character in that movie, and just awesome acting, really, both emotionally and like.
Wait, Nikola Tesla's in this? Oh, what?
Well, not the real Nikola Tesla, but yeah, the character Nikola Tesla's in it.
But still.
No, he's an actor in this film.
Played by David Bowie? What? Oh my gosh, I hate to see this.
Just because the actor combo is like that, it actually takes itself super seriously, which is the best. Like,
that's funny.
This film is both driven by like emotional, kind of like in the sense of like Inception, but also just like people that hate each other and like want to see each other fail, and it's kind of like that kind of situational comedy I think that you were talking about with like in Inception, how they like want to talk about like power of attorney, like when Fisher Senior is like dying, and like a lot of this film is a little bit like that, where it's just like, wow, these people really hate each other. Look at look at what they're willing to do to each other. But really great film. I guess we're getting off topic here.
Yeah,
but
we're
it's
very much in the weeds, but that's okay because pushing an hour and only the most dedicated people watch this. Hi, Mom. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for words on the rest of Tenet, though. I'm gonna have to watch it again, I guess. I came in so this is awesome, best movie I've ever seen, and now both of you guys have been like, yeah, well, what about this? I'm like,
One thing that I think is good to talk about that is that would be an interesting discussion is this movie and theaters and the pandemic and Nolan's future with this.
Okay.
Because this film had a very interesting release. They had an initial release date for like, I want to say like April of 2020, which was one of the best times to release a movie. Everyone 100%. Knows this, but
100%.
They eventually pushed it back to like August, September. Had an international release first just to kind of try it out, and then it released throughout the U.S., just not in like huge cities. And I was lucky enough to see it actually before the release date of the U.S. because our theaters are cool and they get what's called like early access showing.
Nice.
I think that just means they got the film early and they didn't know what to do, so they let people come in early. But
of course.
So they want to make money because they haven't had people for 6 months. But Yeah, I think this film was an interesting film to kind of like say, hey, movies are back. Because it was too controversial for everyone to be like, oh yeah, I want to go see this film now that everyone's saying mixed things about it. Like it's not like a Marvel movie where like everyone's going to that to see it in the theater and get that theater experience. But
that's a good point. I haven't been in the theater since Star Wars Episode 9 came out. That kind of jarred me from all of the Star Wars movies, and now theater experiences have been ruined. Not because of COVID, but because of Star Wars Episode 9. It wrecked it that bad for me that never going back to a movie theater. Yeah, I don't know. I never really liked really loud movie theaters, I guess. Like, I remember watching The Lion King in IMAX with the IMAX sound, whatever they call it, not Dolby Atmos, but
Dolby. It's not Dolby.
No, it's the IMAX version of Dolby Atmos, their enhanced sound. It's like, I don't remember what they call it. Some
I don't have IMAX theaters near me, so I don't get a.
Yeah, I love me a good IMAX theater. It's like, 100 feet by 130 feet or something. You just get lost in. But whatever sound system they were using, they cranked up the volume way too much, and I just felt like my ears were bleeding the entire time. I'm like,
well,
I don't know.
To talk on my experience with Tenet in the theater.
Yeah,
I saw it at 2 different theaters. The first theater, it was like really just blaring, and like it was funny because they had signs up saying like all the audio is intentional because of all the weird mixing stuff. But like, it's not our fault. Trust us. Come back, please. But
don't be scared.
It was Nolan. It was Nolan all along.
It was Nolan all along.
Yeah. But then the second time I went to the theater, they turned the volume down, and I actually enjoyed it less because it wasn't blaring like as crazy loud as it was. But yeah,
that's fair. Yeah.
Was there a difference between theaters and the scenes where the soundtrack overtook the volume or the dialogue? Was there a difference that you noticed between either of those, or not really?
Nope. It was the same on both. Just they turned it down at the one theater, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm at a loss for words, if you couldn't tell.
If we want to talk about theaters, there's a couple movies I have seen in theaters since then that I'm glad they didn't open with Wonder Woman 1984, because that is literally the worst film I've ever seen.
I haven't seen it. I've heard very bad things about it, so I've avoided it.
Don't waste 2.5 hours of your life on that.
Okay.
I don't know if that's how long it is, but no.
What's wrong with that? You've gotten me curious.
Everything happens for no reason. They're like, we need to get to Egypt now, and then they spend 20 minutes watching fireworks. Like, the pacing is the worst. It's super slow. Pedro Pascal, he may be a great actor, but his character in that film was just the worst. Like, super repetitive. Every single line that he had said it at some point before. Like, the whole plot was like super cliche, and like the whole antagonist turnaround thing was really cliche, and I just hated every minute of it. But
speaking of pacing, though, I did actually think Tenet's pacing was really like breakneck. Like, if you tuned out for like 2 minutes, you could be really lost on the story, and that actually reminded me of Rise of Skywalker. I have that in my notes. Like, and obviously not in a good way, because nothing reminds you of that film in a good way. So I don't know if you guys noticed that, but like, keeping up with this movie was, I mean, that's part of the reason it was so hard to get invested, just because it goes so fast and it leaves you very little room to even catch up with the story.
Yeah. I definitely noticed that during the fight scene at the ending. Time paradox? No, what was it? Something else. Pincer. Temporal
pincer movie.
Temporal pincer. Whatever. Confusing names for no reason. During that scene, I had a text come through, and I opened up my text messages on my iPad, and I was texting, but it was up playing in PIP, And when I finished the text message, not even a few seconds later, I clicked back on the thing, and I'd missed the entire building exploding in two different directions of time. So I'm like, dang it, I missed that. So I had to go back and rewatch it. Anyway, I was like, yeah, you're totally right there. Like, you stop paying attention for a second, and you're right, Nate. You're just lost.
That's why you have to see it in theater, because it's kind of hard to stop paying attention to the theater unless if you're Nate and you fall asleep. No.
I know.
Well, I mean, that's what happens when you go to a 10:30 showing. So, yeah, not a great idea there. But
this is fair.
I've actually got a point on that scene Nick was talking about with the building exploding twice. Like, as cool as it was, it did not need to happen at all, because the whole point of it was to be a distraction. But there are only two people who are standing right by that tunnel who could just be shot. There's no one on that building, and we don't see anyone get distracted by it. So that's one of the moments where I'm thinking, like, okay, this is just coming off to be, oh, look at that cool visual. It's not like it makes sense for that to be happening. And unfortunately, there's just some other moments like that.
Sorry, I'm not.
As much as I would like to enjoy this movie, that kind of makes it tough right there.
Yeah, I can feel that, and there's a bit of contrivity saying, oh yeah, there's the obvious way into the secret lair, and then there's the back door that nobody knows about, and for some reason the bad guys only have one guy guarding. It's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Movie needs to happen. Movies need to make money, so I guess that's what we got. But we'll contrive there. Yeah. I'm happy.
There's so much to unpack where like it's hard to decide what to unpack.
I know, right?
Oh yeah.
I need to go back and think about it some more. But I need to go do some more homework. And we need to have a part 2 review. We can have the first part 2 review.
That'd be kind of fun. Yeah.
So I finally figured out what this movie was about. Let's talk about it again. Yeah.
Yep.
TENET,
you guys
1 year later review.
It'll be like a tech product. Like, here's my review of TENET. So I've been using TENET for a couple weeks now, and
I have some thoughts.
I'm still confused. Please send help.
Yep.
Yeah. Do either of you have any closing thoughts?
Well, should we each go over some rankings again?
Okay.
oh yeah,
Go ahead.
you first, Nate.
All right. So the first time I saw this movie, I actually wrote a 1-sentence review. And for the most part, that still holds up with what I think about it. So I'll read that, and I've got a grade to go with it. So
Okay.
TENET's incredible visuals are undermined by its convoluted plot, which finds itself more interested in spectacle than a compelling, character-driven narrative. And my objective grade is going to be around a B-. And subjectively, just how much I enjoyed it, I think that's around a B+.
Okay. How about you, Nathan?
I think you read that 1-sentence review on a Twitter Spaces that we did. We still
On
need
the
to do
Twitter
another one of
Spaces,
those.
yeah.
That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think my objective letter grade is also going to be a B-, just because this film is way too large scale for it to be just like just put that on the background while we're hanging out, like no, you're not doing that. But
No.
I think for my personal opinion, I'm gonna give it a solid A- because I really enjoyed it and I thought it was pretty good.
That's fair. I'm gonna withhold an objective grade because I feel like I've had time to think about it enough for an objective grade. But for a subjective grade, I think I'll probably give it about a B+, A-, somewhere in that range. It was enjoyable. I don't feel like I wasted any of my time because I feel like I'm about to go watch it again at some point and figure out what exactly this whole thing is about. Left me hanging in enough moments where I didn't feel, super bored. Actually, I don't think the movie let me breathe at all, except for like the dumb dialogue expository scenes where they're like, oh yeah, so matter travels in 2 directions via the quantum
I have 2 clips that I'm gonna send on that group text that we can maybe have those in post because they're just something.
just science jargon.
Yeah.
So
just copy and paste the Wikipedia article into the script.
A-, B+, somewhere in that range subjectively, but I don't feel like I should have an objective grade at the moment because I haven't thought about it enough. Yeah. Anything from you, Mr. Nathan?
I think that the score and the like experience of it, like this movie is comparable to like the feeling of riding a roller coaster, I would say. Like especially if you're seeing it on a bigger screen with really loud audio. So you can kind of look at it from two different ways. You can look at it as an experience or you can look at it as a story. And I say why not both, but yeah, it's crazy thrill ride as well as some interesting thinky stuff.
Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly.
Doctor Who references are the best.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, good movie. Thanks for the recommendation there. I think kind of both of your recommendations on that Twitter Spaces that I should watch this. So thanks both of you for having me watch this.
Problem.
I'm going to be thinking about it a lot. But...
I'll make you watch movies anytime.
I know it's kind of painful. So I'm like, so many things to do and not enough time to do it. And budgeting 2.5 hours always feels like a big chore at the beginning. Then I end up enjoying it. So appreciate it.
You don't need sleep. You need to watch movies. There's
sleep.
It's as simple as that.
I already don't sleep. I need to work is what I need to do. Think all that content just makes itself? No.
What content? No,
exactly. What content? That's a better question. All the behind the scenes stuff that nobody sees. Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Thanks for joining. Been fun. Been a pleasure. We'll catch you guys next time as we discuss something that I'm not remembering at the moment, but we wrote something down, and so we'll have something for next week. See you guys later. Bye.